Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video features the unicorn stamps and dies from My Favorite Things along with the cloud stencil. Love the cloud stencil, could never get enough cloud stencil. Before we get into the card, I do just want to let you know that My Favorite Things is having a sale. They're celebrating their 16th birthday, and so in order to celebrate that, they're doing 16% off everything in the store, including the new release, which is amazing. So these stamps and dies, at least through July 15th, are on sale. Today, we are making a flat shaker. Now, I have no idea why I associate this with whimsical scenes, but that is what I associate flat shakers with. Because if you remember correctly, the only other one I've ever done was a mermaid scene, and now here I am back with unicorns. So I thought it would be really fun to do rainbow clouds, and that is how I kind of started. I knew I wanted to use the unicorn set, and I was trying to figure out a scene that I could do, and this cloud stencil is my go-to. If you don't have this cloud stencil, you need to pick it up. 4 different clouds on each side, and I'm just, as I'm going through each color, I am rotating the stencil so that none of the same cloud styles are next to each other. I chose, 7 different colors of distress ink, distress oxides, because they're softer, they dry a little bit more pastel. And so I try to keep them relatively light, just for something different. I know that I'm normally like big, bold colors, but I was just trying to go a little bit different. And so I went with Kitsch Flamingo, Saltwater Taffy, Squeezed Lemonade, Twisted Citron, Salvage Patina, Salty Ocean, and Shaded Lilac. So just like more pastel notes, which I think turned out being really pretty. I didn't really have I guess I could have used dried marigold, but I didn't really have an orange I was in love with. So I kind of substituted this saltwater taffy coral color in for my orange, and I think it worked. I think it worked out okay. And so, like I said, just going through, flipping it around. Once I used 4 sides of it, I cleaned it off, and then continued just moving my way up the card. One thing to note, that Shaded Lilac, I just put on when I first started so that the bottom wouldn't be empty, because I don't have any clouds to put there, so that's just me filling in that empty space. It's up to you whether or not you want to leave that a bold, bright white, but it gave me an excuse to get one more color in there, and I was happy with that. Once the stenciling is done, I'm going to go ahead and spatter on some Perfect Pearls, because this is a fun, whimsical, magical kind of scene, and anytime... Well, I shouldn't even say anytime there's anything like fun and whimsy, I want to put Perfect Pearls on it, but I put Perfect Pearls on a lot of things. So anytime you want some extra shine, do the Perfect Pearls. I knew that I was going to do more clear shaker bits, and so I thought that these would be, like the little spatters of the Perfect Pearls, would be a good way to keep some shine in the background, even when the shaker bits were not necessarily up at the top. And then we're going to move on to the stamping. So I stamped all 3 unicorns and the rainbow. I was a little bit concerned because I was having 4 elements, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to find a way to make those work together, so they weren't paired, but I think I made it work okay. You let me know what you think about the layout. But I'm going to go ahead and stamp these down. This is Hero Arts Intense Black ink, and I just stamp those, and then we're going to get into the coloring. So I wanted my unicorns to be white, but if you're coloring something white, you still have to put the shadows in order for it to have any dimension. Sandy Allnock, I don't know if you've ever watched her videos, she's amazingly talented, but if you've ever watched her videos, then you know that there are some times where she talks about how if you put a lot of effort into coloring this one thing, then you don't necessarily have to put the same amount of effort into coloring all of the things. Like, you don't have to be as detailed, and it's still okay if your focal point is what you've detailed out. And I'm kind of using, normally I detail out everything because I have problems. I can't stop myself. But I'm kind of using that guideline with this card. So I'm going in and I'm adding all of the shadows very detailed into my unicorns. And just remember, when you're adding your shading, like where your darkest area should be, where 2 points meet or where something lays on top of one another. In this case, you'll also see me adding in shadows. Almost all of these unicorns are looking down, and so under their chin and under their neck would also be in shadow, and then under their belly and their back legs will also be darker because they're tucked underneath their body. So those are just some little trick things when you're looking at how to color an object, an image. And so I'm going to be really particular with how I color my unicorns. They're going to look gray. It's fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Because we're just adding in the shadows. We're adding in the darkest parts. And we're leaving a lot of white area. The majority of my unicorn is still white. I keep catching my wedding ring on my chair. I was trying to scratch an itch. Anyway, so you still want to leave the majority of that white area, but by adding in the shadows, you're going to give it a lot of dimension. And like your darkest color, which for me is a C5, you should really only have just like a dot or a thin line here and there. You don't need to cover the entire image like with your darkest color. You don't need a lot of it. You just need enough to give you that little depth of color for the shadow, and then that's it. Then you just blend it back out, but leave lots of white. But anyway, so once I do these, I'm going to pretty much color the rest of it with almost there's definitely no shading, but so not a lot of detail, and they're still gonna look put together because we took the time to color their bodies the way to give them that dimensional look. So like I said, these are going to look gray. They always do, no matter if it's a flower, a unicorn, a whatever. When you color something white, it looks gray until you put it with other colors. So you'll definitely be able to tell the difference once we start adding the colors to their manes, which I did do a rainbow. Yes, I did. No regrets. Totally did a rainbow for all of their hair because it matched my background and I love rainbows. Sorry, not sorry. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. These I think were from not this most recent release, which I think was just like the last week, but the release before that is where these unicorns came from. And when everything was on sale for the 4th of July, I picked them up from Ellen Hudson. And so now I'm super happy that if you are interested in them, you can also get them on sale. Isn't that fun? We're just sharing. And realistically, I am going to go over there and probably have to shop some of their stencils because I do have a couple. I have a grass. I have a like a square one, a star one, but really the one that I come back to every time is this cloud one just because I love it so much. I'm going to add the gray shading to the clouds for the rainbow as well. This is just my go-to technique for clouds. If you want to add any extra lines or swirls, totally okay. It does give it a little bit more detail. Just make sure you're going with the shape of the line that's already there. So I'm going to show you here in a second, if you can see that cloud that's closest to the rainbow, how I went right instead of left, and it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like it goes. And that's important to note that like when you're doing your coloring or your strokes or your shading, your shading, strokes, flicking motion should go with the shape of your object. If you're going against the grain, it's already going to look off. So I'm going to go back in with a colorless blender and just remove that little portion that goes to the right to the best of my ability. And I am going to end up going over these with a B00, just right over the shading to add some more blue in there because you know we love the blue here. Yes, we do. So I'm not really super worried about it. I picked Copic markers that I knew would blend well together. This is very similar color blend to the 7 markers that I showed you in a previous video. I'll link that at the end. I'll link that video in case you're interested in those 7 markers. But basically, instead of doing 4s, where all the markers end in 4s, almost all of these end in 2 or 3. So they all will blend really nicely together. Remember, when you're picking markers you want, different colors to blend into each other, you want to look at that last number, and that's how you know they're going to blend, because they're the same intensity. And so I just picked ones that matched my Distress Oxide inks that I had picked. And then I just filled in my rainbow, and I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 little saddles. Who'd put a saddle on a unicorn anyway? I mean, honestly, you can't tame a unicorn. But they are pretty saddles. And so I'm just going to fill these in randomly with the colors that I have, the same types of colors. And I'm just trying to pick ones that I know will play nicely with each other. And then I'm going to move on to coloring their manes and tails. And I just went directly in rainbow order for that. If you find that maybe your colors aren't blending as easy as you would like, sometimes it's hard with like the BVO2 and the RVO2, so the blue, violet, and the pink. Or the yellow and the green, sometimes just go over it with the lighter color. So in the case of the blue, violet, and the pink, you would just go back over it with the pink. In the case of the green and the yellow, you would go back over it with the yellow. So now, like I said, here we are. We're going to move on to the mane, and you'll be able to see just how easy this is. And it does help that it's a smaller area. They blend pretty easy in smaller areas. Anything blends easier in smaller areas. But so I'm going to show you 2 of them, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I have kind of a funny story for you. And it was so funny because after it happened, my husband was like, "You're going to put this on YouTube, aren't you?" And I'm going to tell you right now, somewhere in the world, my husband is listening to this video, and he already knows what story I'm going to tell. So a couple of things that I need to preface for you to understand why this is so funny. So first things first, children don't listen. Y'all know that. If you got kids, they don't listen. Even the best behaved children find themselves in situations where they don't listen. And mine is, well, I mean, Caitlin can't listen yet. She doesn't understand the concept of things. But my oldest, he is just a whirlwind. Like, if you remember back in the day, if you're old like me, Looney Tunes, like he's like a little Tasmanian devil. He's just always go, 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 go. And oftentimes I have to remind him not to run in the house, particularly not to run in his socks, because I just envision him breaking something, splitting his head open. My sister did that when we were little, like literally, right? She still has a scar down the center of her forehead. But that's a story for another time. But anyway, so I tell him all the time not to do it. Eric tells him all the time not to do it. Don't run in your socks, don't run in your socks, don't run in your socks. Because we have hardwood floors in our eat-in kitchen, our dining room, and our hallway in foyer. We'd only have carpet in the family room and the front room. So my husband, I don't know if your husband is or your partner is like mine, but he basically likes to harass me all day long. He just wants to harass me out of love. So he always be chasing me around, grabbing at me, chasing me around, trying to give me a hard time about stuff. He's very playful, which I do appreciate, even if sometimes he takes it a little over the top. But that's better than somebody who's not interested in spending any time with me or joking around with me at all. So I'll take a little over the top versus zilch. So anyway, I don't like to be, there's so many little anecdotes that go with this. I don't like to have no shoes on. I'm not a barefoot person, especially if I'm in the house. If I'm in the house, I have my slippers on or I have a pair of flip-flops on. Summer flip-flops. During the morning when I first get up, I've got socks and I've got my slippers on. I don't want to be without the slippers. I don't like it. I don't want to be walking around barefooted. There's other people completely different. One of my best friends since childhood, I'm pretty sure that she could walk through gravel that has been poured with hot tar that has charcoal burning on it, and it wouldn't even bother her because her feet have been walking on concrete with no shoes for the entirety of her life. Back to the card real quick. So I'm adding a, apparently I'm losing my voice. I am adding a couple little accents with a white gel pen, and then I'm going to go ahead and die cut these out. So he likes to take my slippers. This is one of the ways he harasses me. He takes my slippers. So he took my slipper and like threw it around, and I was trying to go get it. He was getting ready to go outside and cut the grass. And so he literally pushed my slipper all the way through the kitchen, like holding me off with one arm and pushing my slipper with his feet right out the garage door. So he goes out the door right after it because he's going outside to cut the grass. And I go out the door to get my slipper, but then I grabbed his tennis shoes that he wears to cut the grass, and I threw them in the kitchen and I shut the door. This is instant karma, y'all. It was, it's instant karma. It's so good. So he thinks he's going to be funny. And so he chases me into the kitchen, and while I'm trying to put my slipper back on, he decides he is going to try to kick it out from under my feet. So he's running into the door into the kitchen and trying to kick my slipper out from underneath my feet. And he totally just eats it right in the middle. Right in the middle of the kitchen. His feet go out from underneath him. I mean, he is flat on his back in the middle of the kitchen. It was hysterical. I told him later, I was like, you were like a 16-year-old eating it on a skateboard, like just right down the half pipe. Just there you go. It was like, and I immediately turned around and was like, are you okay? But then once I realized he was laughing, I started laughing so hard that I literally just sat in the floor. Like I just sat in the floor crying because I was laughing so hard. It was so comical. It was just because what he was doing, you know what I mean? He was trying to get me, but then he got, and it was it was hysterical. All right, let's talk about the card real quick. So here, what I've done is I've created almost like a one piece by bridging the gap between the two pieces with the rainbow. So instead of it looking like 4 separate pieces, it now looks like 2 separate pieces. And I'm going to use this other unicorn on the outside of my shaker card along with my sentiment. So the other 2 are glued down flat to be inside my shaker. The other one will go on the outside. In order to create my shaker, I just have some old packaging here. I'm going to cut them apart. I tried to see if I could pull it along the seam, and this one kind of started tearing, so I did just end up cutting both sides. And then, trimming off the excess. So now I will have 2 pieces that I could make 2 flat shaker cards with. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to do this one, but I'll set the other piece aside to be used for another flat shaker, probably in another 6 months when I get another fun little whimsical die set that I want to make a scene with, because that seems to be my MO. So anyway, it was just like the funniest thing. Not only because he was trying to get me and then he got, because that's hysterical, but also because it's something that we both yell at our child for, like, all the time. Like, we scold, like, don't run in your socks. I've told you not to run in your socks. Don't run in your socks. No running in the socks. And then here he is running in socks. I almost wish Nathan could have been there to see it, because I think that it would have left an impression. I know I'll never forget. I know I'll never forget it. So then anyway, after we were done laughing and carrying on or whatever, he literally said to me, he goes, that's going to be your next YouTube story, isn't it? And I was like, I don't know if it'll be the next one, but buddy, it's going to be in there. It is going to be in there for sure. So constructing the flat shaker card, I flipped it upside down so that the finished piece is facing the solid portion of the plastic. And then I am using a tape runner. I used to have red line tape, but apparently I have misplaced it and I need to buy some more. But I'm just going to use this to go ahead and fold the acetate up on 3 sides. Do not seal the top of it. That's where we're going to put in the shimmery shaky bits to make our card an actual flat shaker. All of these little corners seem to stick up whenever I fold them down. I don't like it. And so I just trim them off. I just trimmed it off at a diagonal, and I haven't had any issues with that not holding for some reason. I just trim off the part that's sticking up. Now that we have this built, I am going to just pick a couple of sequins and dewdrops to stick in here. Like I said, you could do this any way you wanted to. Whatever background you got going on or whatever shaker bits that you have. You can use whatever. I knew that I had a lot going on in the background scene, and so I chose to stick to just clear or what are those ones called? Reflective dewdrops. They're like rainbow dewdrops. So they look clear until you catch them in the light, and then they have like a rainbow shine. So, and then small dewdrops, and then clear sequins. That's everything that went in there. When I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and take the top piece now that it's full and fold it over on the adhesive that I have there, and then bam, shaker, flat shaker. Super fun. I really like these. I may try to sell it in the store. If not, I may just save it and give it to my goddaughter for her birthday. So there's 2 sentiments in this set, but there's obviously endless amounts of sentiments that would go with this. I chose to use one from the set. It says, wishing you a day as unique and special as you, which I really like. And then the other one says, there's a unicorn, and then there's a YOUnicorn, like Y-O-U, which is also how you spell the set in case you're looking for it. In order to make this blend in a little bit better with the background scene, I am going to add just a smidge of shaded lilac to my label sentiment. And that's because it's sitting right above the portion of my shaker card that has the shaded lilac, and so it'll all kind of be matchy-matchy, which you know I'm a big fan of. And then I'm going to just hold my sentiment in place while I adhere my unicorn so that it sits where I want it to. I wanted to be able to see enough of the unicorn that I didn't waste my time coloring it, but I also wanted it to be overlapping with the sentiment. So I did use dry adhesive for this. I was a little bit worried that my liquid adhesive would be a little bit messy on top of that plastic. But you use whatever works best for you. So now that that is all full, I am going to, eventually I will put this on a card base, but for right now I am just going to put a backer piece on it so that it's solid and it's all together. And I don't have to worry about, when I file it in my little card filing system for cards I'm going to sell, that it's going to go anywhere. So yeah, that's, I'm going to add some shimmer to the one on the outside, his little mane. I'm going to add some clear, did I use Winkostella or the Nuvo one? They're basically the same thing. Use whichever one, either or, they work the same. So that's it. That's the whole card. I think it's super fun. I hope you learned a little something and you're excited to maybe try this to make a card for someone. And I hope you enjoyed the story. I know I did. I will enjoy it every time I retell it. And to my husband, I love you. Thank you for the hilarious story to share with my YouTubers. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And I will catch you on the next video. Bye.